confirmation about the audio, please, guys. If the audio is clear and available, kindly confirm the same. Thank you. So, hello, a very warm good morning to all of you, and welcome to Baiju's Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the last weekend for geography, and today we shall be looking at few of the portions of Indian geography which has been left. Now, yesterday we looked at the portions of forests, we looked at the conditions of soil, and also we looked at agriculture. Now, today we are going to finish that portion of agriculture. We are going to take a look into organic farming, agroclimatic zone, a type of organic farming that is the zero budget natural farming. And then we are going to look into the portion of minerals, industries, population, and settlement. So that is the portion that we are going to be concentrating upon. And at the end of the day, we shall also be focusing upon how to approach maps, right? So in that mapping module, we shall have an idea about how to approach maps in general. So yesterday we had finished the discussion with the Green Revolution. And we had discussed that while Green Revolution, that brought about significant amount of prosperity in terms of agriculture. But at the same time, it exposed certain limitations. And limitations in the sense that you had over-reliance on high-yielding variety of seeds. You had a culture of over-irrigation and over-application of fertilizers, due to which the soil is turning infertile in those areas. And also there is an increased reliance and increased stress on the food grains, food crops, and that means the other crops such as fruits and vegetables often take a back seat. Then after that, we also looked at the fact that implementation of Green Revolution in only one part of the country has brought about regional disparity in terms of the farmers and the income level of the farmers. So now we initiate the discussion further ahead, and we start with, first of all, the aspect of livestock. Now, when we talk about livestock, so basically, just like the human population, India is also blessed with a very high amount of livestock population as well. Now, here, if you consider various different types of cattle, buffalo, goats, sheep, all of them, they are to be found in plentiful and significant amount in India. Now, out of this, what you have to extract is not necessarily the exact number or the exact population of these resources. You have to understand and extract a larger point, that if we have such a significant amount of livestock resources in our country, then that livestock resource can be utilized to augment farm income as well. And thereby, that livestock resource that can be used to provide income support to the farmers. Income support to farmers. And that is where the farmers, if they practice the mixed farming ideals, mixed farming is what? Mixed farming is going to be cultivation, crop cultivation plus animal husbandry. So crop cultivation plus animal husbandry. So if they end up practicing both of them, that is crop cultivation along with animal husbandry, we already have a significant proportion of livestock population. So if that is carried out, significant income augmentation will happen. In fact, when the government set up the Ashok Dalwai Committee way back in 2015 in order to talk about that how to increase the farm income and how to achieve the doubling of farm income, at that point of time, the committee also recommended that if the farmers have to substantially increase their income, they have to diversify from crop cultivation, because crop cultivation in itself has got a limitation in terms of farm income. Because when is it that the farmers will suddenly start to earn much more in the case of cultivating crops? It can only be if the prices they increase quite significantly, and that cannot happen. Prices cannot be allowed to increase substantially, because those food grains or the produces that are also consumed by a large amount of population. Now also, there are certain inefficiencies in the way of how that cultivated crop is finally transported and how is it finally going to reach the market and to us consumers. So there are a lot of hidden costs involved. So there is only amount of a kind of a limitation in terms of how much the farmers can earn just by crop cultivation. So that is why in order to increase the farm income, they need to go for a diversification of income as well. So that is where animal husbandry and the livestock resources come in. Now, this animal resource or the livestock resource, they can help the farmers earn money by the skin, by sometimes when you have the animals being sold for their hides, that is the skin, or by meat, etc., by the eggs. So for all these, they get a substantial amount of money in return, and that is always going to be a long term benefit for the farmers as well. And if the farmers, let's say, they pursue the growth of certain types of crops, for example, certain crops such as the millets, maize, etc. Now, these crops, while they are sturdy enough to be grown in any kind of conditions, these crops also have the ability to be used both as fodder as well as for crops and food. So that is where this is going to come in help. So hides and skins, wool, eggs, meat, milk, everything can be a beneficial outcome for the farmers. Name of the committee, Avni, it was Ashok Dalwai Committee. The committee was Ashok Dalwai Committee. It was set up in order to recommend doubling of farm income. Farm income. Okay. So that was the committee which was set up, and in its recommendation, it had said that animal husbandry can provide a significant boost. And the reason also we have seen. Then the aspect of agroclimatic zones, while this is not oftentimes asked directly in the mains examination for general studies, it is important to for us to know that what is the concept of agroclimatic zones. So basically, it was realized a long time back that if India's agricultural productivity has to increase, it cannot increase based upon a productivity and production carried out in one part or pocket of the country. It can only happen when across the country the production increases quite substantially. When across the country uniformly there is a significant increase in agricultural production. So that is where basically in the late 80s and the 90s it was realized that look, if you have to augment or improve the agriculture, let's say in coastal Andhra Pradesh or coastal Odisha, the techniques which need to be applied and also the methodologies which are required to be applied, all those will be very different if you want to increase the agricultural productivity, let's say in Rajasthan or Maharashtra or Madhya Pradesh or even Punjab, Haryana. So all of these places across the country, they end up representing, and we do know, we have studied in the earlier portion of Indian geography, that entirety of the part of the country experiences different physiography, isn't it? All of them, they will experience a kind of a different physiographical feature, different topographical realities. So different physiography means different topography, or they can be included in the same portion, or here we can write different soil types across the parts of the country. If we talk about Peninsular Plateau has got red yellow soil, and in some portions the presence of black soil. When we talk about the regions such as the northern Gangetic Plains, it has got alluvial soil. So you cannot have the same technique of agriculture giving you the benefit in all the cases, right? So there it was also realized that different portions of the country, they also experience varied climate in terms of, and climate comprises of temperature as well as rainfall. So for example, we had talked about it yesterday that when we talk about, let's say, Assam or coastal Odisha or coastal Tamil Nadu, now throughout the year the conditions are ideal to grow maybe three varieties of rice differently and continuously. But when we talk about, let's say, Punjab, now in Punjab, the conditions, they are suitable to grow a winter crop as well, because the temperatures during the winter season, they drop drastically. So because the temperature is different, the amount of rainfall is different. So obviously the cultivated crop should be different, and also the methodologies of cultivation should be different. So that is why, in order to have a different kind of an agricultural approach varying across the country, taking in account the variability in terms of the soil types, climatic types that is experienced across the country, the entire country was subdivided into 15 agroclimatic zones. Each of these agroclimatic zones would represent their own unique topography and own unique climatic conditions. For example, the region of Western Himalayas, if you will observe, look at this particular image. Now, observe agroclimatic zone number one. This entire portion of Western Himalayas has been included in agroclimatic zone number one. Now, it includes the region of Jammu Kashmir, Ladakh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Now, all these areas, they represent a mountainous terrain, right? So they will represent a kind of an extremely low temperature during significant part of the year. So here you cannot have the same agricultural productivity and the same agricultural process, which, let's say, you observe in zone number 8, that is the Central Plateau region. Okay, the Central Plateau and hills. Then, for example, zone 2, it represents the region of Eastern Himalayas. It will indicate very high amount of rainfall, presence of very dense forest, as well as the hilly regions. Here the rainfall will be less, hilly regions will be there. Here the rainfall will be high along with the presence of the hilly areas. Then zone number 3, lower Ganga plains. Zone number 4, that is the eastern UP portions of Bihar, that is going to have zone number 4, that is the middle Ganga plain. Zone number 5, upper Ganga plain. And zone number 6 would represent trans Ganga plain, that is in between the Indus and the Ganga river basin. So like that, they will represent different topographical feature and different climatic realities at the same time. For example, if you take a look at zone number 11 here, this is a coastal feature. And across the eastern coast, you have very fertile sedimentary deposits carried out by the rivers such as Mahanadi, Krishna, Kaveri, Godavari, Penar, all of these, they will have a very extensive sedimentary deposit being carried out. So that will come under zone number 11. Zone number 12 will have the western coastal plains, right? So like that, you have the division of the country into the various agroclimatic zone. Now, the purpose of it, why is it that it was divided into agroclimatic zone. I hope we understand and we are able to objectify it, basically to improve the agricultural output. Every area will increase their agricultural output, means the country will gain food sufficiency. It won't have the condition of a food scarcity. Let's say the crops have failed in the central portion, right? But in the surrounding areas, if the productivity has been augmented, there will be food security. Overall, the income of the farmers in each of these areas will also improve. And you will have a definite different approach to be followed in different parts of the country. So, here, these were the objectives and the purpose: food sufficiency of the country, commercialization of agriculture. Now, commercialization of agriculture, as the name suggests, when you take a look at this, commercialization of agriculture, it is not absolutely a bad thing to happen. Commercialization means that you are growing crops for profit purposes. When a farmer toils his field and toils very hard in the shining sun, but the body gets burnt. Now, obviously, at that point of time, it is not the case that I am going to produce food that some other person will eat out of free. No. The effort is that I will do this hard work. Maybe I'll earn some amount of money so that I can keep my family up and running. So, commercialization of agriculture is when you produce food for your profit purposes, for your income generation. That is the commercialization, and this is an absolute good thing. So, production for profit generation. Okay. The production which is carried out for profit generation. Now, here, if you have surplus output, then you can also augment the exports of agricultural products. We have seen that exports of agricultural products alone, they give India close to around $50 billion in revenue. And that is a huge sum. But yes, there is an obvious significant scope to increase that. But still, it is a substantial sum. And then, if you grow different crops in the area where it is suitable, let's suppose if you grow rice in the coastal plains, which receive very high amount of rainfall, then obviously the groundwater level will not be significantly depleted as compared to growing rice, let's say in Punjab and Haryana, where the amount of rainfall received is very little. And in order to accommodate for that deficiency of water, people will pump out the groundwater. So that will lead to groundwater depletion also in Punjab and Haryana, which is already happening. And also at the same time, that crop is going to deplete the fertility of the soil as well. For example, if yesterday we talked about the case of millets. Now, millets traditionally have been grown in the regions of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana. Traditionally, it has been grown. It was only after Green Revolution when even many of these areas they switched over to rice and wheat. But then traditionally rice and wheat in these areas, they oftentimes experience failures. For example, sugarcane cultivation in eastern Maharashtra, Vidarbha region of Maharashtra. Sugarcane, when it was cultivated, in the past decade and a half, significant amount of crop failures have happened. Now, when a crop failure happens, not only does the farmer lose the prospective income for the entire year, at the same time, you also have the risk of that farmer getting entangled into the web of the money lenders, where the money lenders will lend you money to pay for your older debt, and in order to pay the debt that you have taken from money lender, you will need to have another debt taken somewhere else. So you are stuck in that debt cycle. So that is never healthy. So that is why, in order to maintain the agri-ecology, agricultural ecology refers to maintenance of environmental conditions around the soil. The soil should be productive. It refers to the maintenance of fertility, groundwater level, everything within the soil. So that is what is comprised under agri-ecology. So also, that agroclimatic zone classification helps in maintenance of agroecology by growing the crops which are required in those particular areas. Okay. Now, Having said that, green revolution, initially for the initial 10 to 15 years, green revolution would be very, very productive. And even now, green revolution techniques have increased the productivity and production amount. But then, within the first 20 years of implementation, you already had the limitations being exposed. That look, by applying fertilizers, by applying chemical pesticides, insecticides, you can ensure an increase in productivity for some time. But at the same time, when you are applying them, it also increases your farm cost, right? The input cost that the farmer has to supply, that will be increased because the farmer now needs to buy a high yielding variety of seed. The farmer needs to buy, let's suppose, the fertilizers, let's suppose the insecticides, pesticides, etc. So the cost will increase for the farmer. And if the input cost increases, let's say it is being sold at the same price, and if the input cost has increased, basically means what? The income generated by the farmer is going to decrease. Understand this graph. Let's suppose this is the selling price. Selling price for any good. Now this selling price has largely remained same. There is a slight increase. But at the same time, the cost price which the farmer has to put in to buy all these items, that has been slowly increasing. So selling price minus cost price is the income. This depicts the farm income, isn't it? So the selling price is not increasing at the same rate as the cost prices. So there can be only two solutions to increase the farm income. One can be that you substantially increase the selling price, but then the entirety of the country will suffer because of this. If the food grain selling price is increased, then the entire country will suffer from it. Then what can be the other condition to increase the farm income? You bring down the cost price. Let's suppose the cost price is brought down. Now, if the cost price is reduced, observe farm income has a potential to significantly increase itself. So that is why from Green Revolution, there has been this learning that this cost price is increasing at an unsustainable rate and it needs to be capped, it needs to be brought down. So then learnings were taken and organic farming is now being promoted, not only in India but across the world. And for the promotion of organic farming, there have been various different reasons for the same. For example, all the insecticides, pesticides, etc., herbicides, weedicides that we are applying to these croplands and farmlands, they are causing increased amount of contamination level in our body, which is not healthy for the young ones or even for the adult population. It is not healthy at all. Secondly, all this, let's say urea, phosphate, potash, etc., that we are consistently applying on the soil, that eventually percolates downwards into the soil, gets drained away to a nearby lake or a pond, pollutes the lake or a pond, and creates that algal growth. If you would have observed, and this is something you would have experienced, I'm sure, that if you will find a lake which is surrounded by a small pond, for example, which is surrounded by a lot of farmlands, you will find that a greenish tinge develops on that lake as well. That is the algal growth happening because of pollution of nitrogen, potash, phosphate, etc. So that is why, in order to reduce the contamination level, the pollution level, to make agriculture more eco-friendly, more sustainable, that is where organic farming comes in, and organic farming is being promoted. Now, the definition of organic farming is going to confuse you guys. And that is where I have been telling you from day one never start to learn any definition. The moment you try to learn a definition, that is the moment you ensure that you are going to commit a mistake here or there. Always try to understand what this definition talks about. So basically, organic farming, crop cultivation by the organic method, by natural method, without any application of fertilizer or any chemical input. Without that, just by natural measures, you grow a crop. Now, in that case, the worry will always be that, look, all the soil in India, they are devoid of nitrogen, and nitrogen is an important element for the growth of plants. So how do we get that nitrogen if we don't apply urea? Where do we get that? So the answer lies again in natural method. For example, you can always have the crop rotation, that after growing rice, you allow the growth of maybe pulses, grams, peas, which are leguminous crops. Leguminous crops are the ones which will carry out nitrogen fixation in the soil, right? So they will naturally fix the atmospheric nitrogen into the soil, and that will allow the soil in order to recharge itself. One can also go for, along with crop rotation, let's say. Crop rotation is what? Crop rotation is that once you have grown, let's say, rice, after that you grow pulses for some time, then after that you grow the next cropping cycle, so that the soil has got enough time to recharge itself. And then you can also go for intercropping. We have seen yesterday what is intercropping. Intercropping is basically the aspect of multi-cropping, where you grow multiple crops simultaneously in the field, and these crops are grown in definite row and alignment. Now here also, simultaneously, along with, let's say, a food grain, you can grow a vegetable. And when you grow a vegetable along with the food grain, then along with that maybe pulses. So it will not deplete the fertility quite substantially. And at the same time, you are going for diversification of output of your crops, which will always earn you greater amount of income, greater amount of money as well. So this can always be inculcated to increase the farm productivity, and also by natural measures, so that even the pollution is not very high. That is why nowadays, when you go to the market anywhere in the world, you will come across a scenario where the organic food items, they are much greater in demand. They will always be slightly costlier. They are much greater in demand. So there is a definite shift in the market order across the globe, and the world wants to consume things which are organic rather than things which have been produced chemically. And that is the trend that we have to catch very early. Sikkim, as a state, was the first state in the country to become a completely organic state. And you had other hilly states such as Himachal Pradesh, etc. They were also catching up to the trend. But here, you have to understand, organic farming and organic cultivation is particularly going to be beneficial for the hill states, for the hilly areas, because it is in the hilly areas where that supply chain connectivity is not to the mark. So that is where availability of irrigation, for example, availability of, let's say, fertilizers, high yielding variety of seeds, that is going to be an issue. That is where it is in these hilly areas where the farmers truly can become self-dependent or atmanirbhar in order to carry out that crop cultivation. So that is basically the organic farming. So if you take a look at the definition now it is a unique production management system which promotes and enhances agro ecosystem health, including biodiversity, biological cycle, soil biological activity, and this is accomplished by using on-farm agronomic, biological, and mechanical methods in exclusion of all synthetic of farm inputs. So everything natural. Let the natural organisms do their work. So, for example, when we consider an earthworm is considered to be one of the farmer's best friends, because As the earthworm moves through the soil, it manages to consume small bits and manages to excrete even the smaller bits. So thereby there is an improvement in soil texture as the earthworm moves through. And similarly, when the earthworm moves through, let's suppose this is the soil. If the earthworm moves through, it will dig a small hole wherever it is moving. Random motion, let's suppose, it will end up creating a network of holes. And these are very, very tiny, very, very small, but they are sufficient to supply air into the region of the soil which is required by the roots. So that is why earthworms can be very friendly, very helpful for the farmers in general. So if these natural biological activities are allowed to be carried out, obviously over a period of time, you will be able to eliminate the synthetic fertilizers and augment the productivity. So characteristics, what are the characteristics? Protecting the long-term fertility of soil by maintaining the organic matter levels, encouraging soil biological activity, providing the nutrients indirectly using sources which are made available to the plants by action of microorganisms, and also nitrogen, which is a major issue in terms of the soil, nitrogen sufficiency using legumes, that is the plants which allow nitrogen fixation, plants which allow nitrogen fixation to the soil, right? Example, pulses, beans, etc. And as well as effective recycling of organic nutrients and organic residues, for example, crop residue, livestock manure. So by this, you are able to manufacture manure. So manures can be applied. For example, many of the times when you manufacture manure, manure will have the presence of phosphate as well, right? Manure will have some amount of nitrogen also. So that is how you can always augment the soil fertility. Now, this organic farming is as simple as being carried out without any synthetic product. Now, it can be carried out with various different methodologies, various different standard operating procedures. One of the methodologies is the zero budget natural farming. It is nothing but an organic farming. It is a type of organic farming. As simple as that. A type of organic farming which is carried out. Now, here, when we say a type of organic farming to be carried out, what does that mean? Basically, not only do you use the organic methods for production, but at the same time, in this case, you also ensure that the input cost of the farmer is reduced. That is why zero budget. Zero budget means what? That the farmer won't be encouraged to apply any amount of input cost. So whatever are the present residues or the outputs of the farmland, with that itself, you apply the methodology to improve the organic cultivation. So this ZBNF, which is just a methodology of organic farming, has got 4 different stages. It is, first of all, Jivamrut. Jivamrut basically refers to what? It refers to increasing the biological activities and processes in the soil, right? Promoting growth of worms, microbes, etc. Jivamrut, right? So it is a sort of an elixir for the living species. So hence biological activity augmentation will be sought after. Then after that you have Bijamrut. Bijamrut basically is referring to the augmentation or basically treatment of the seeds that you are going to sow. So here, when you are going to plant a seed, at that point of time, you always end up worrying that maybe a fungal infection or a bacterial infection might impact the seed. Maybe you can have a situation where the seed won't grow particularly well. So that is why this is the treatment of the seed. Treatment of seed naturally. And then you carry out the process of mulching. Mulching is what? Mulching, basically, we had talked about in the process of soil conservation. Mulching is when you cover the top portion of the soil by anything, dried leaves, straws, dried twigs, anything. You don't leave the top layer of the soil exposed to the outside. Because if the top layer of the soil is exposed, immediately all the soil moisture will be lost. Due to excessive heating, maybe a crack will open up in the soil and the soil will harden over a period of time, making the growth of plants incredibly difficult. So that is why mulching is a kind of a process where you cover the topsoil. Covering the topsoil to enable it to retain its properties. Now, by Jivamrut, mulching, and Bijamrut, finally you are able to attain Vafasa. Vafasa. Vafasa is that ideal microclimatic and agroecological state within the soil where now the crops will get adequate or the roots will get adequate supply of nutrients, adequate supply of air, moisture, and the plant will grow. So it is attainment of ideal microclimatic and agri-environmental or agri-ecological conditions, right? Attainment of ideal microclimatic and agri-ecological conditions which promotes the plant growth. So it is an attainment of a condition. So it will happen when the first couple of things they are already implemented, only then will the soil be able to reach and attain that level. So that is basically about zero budget natural farming. Here is a depiction of it in a blockwise manner. So again, if I emphasize on this, here observe, first of all, what is done is on that land, you spray Jivamrut. Now, Jivamrut basically is a fluid or a liquid concoction that you prepare. And in that liquid concoction that you prepare, you allow water, cow urine and dung, jaggery, right? Pulses, flour, and soil from the farm. All of that you mix in a solution and you spray it over. The purpose is to revive earthworm population, which aerate the soil and which will allow the microbes to grow as well with the presence of these nutrients that you are spraying. Then what you do is you treat the seed. Bijamrut. So in this, what is done is you take edible lime, cow urine, cow dung, right? And then you mix it up so that all the bacterial and the fungal infections which can basically impact the seeds and its productivity, that is basically warded off, that is taken off, and it also increases the germination rate of the seeds. How is it that it will grow into a plant? That rate, many of the seeds, they are unable to grow into a sapling, so that germination rate will be increased by treating it in that mixture. Then you carry out the process of mulching. I will show you the image of mulching as well, and the purposes of mulching also I will show you different in a different slide altogether. And after that, you attain Vafasa. And Vafasa, once it is attained, here it ensures that the roots get enough oxygen and water, and also enough amount of nutrient is created. This will happen once Jivamrut, mulching, etc. they are in place. They help in attain these ideal agroclimatic and agroecological soil conditions. So this is basically a kind of organic farming. Now here, this is what is mulching. Observe here that crops or the small saplings are planted in rows, but in between them, you won't observe the soil to be exposed. We have, or basically the people cover it with dried straws, dried leaves, dried twigs, anything. Why? So that the soil is able to retain the moisture, so that the topsoil is not exposed and it is not prone to erosion. That is why mulching is carried out. And here, basically, this is the definition aspect of it. A mulch is natural or artificially spread layer of plant residues or other materials on the surface of the soil. The important objective is moisture conservation, first, temperature control, so that the soil's temperature doesn't increase substantially, prevention of surface compaction. What is that? So when the soil is significantly heated, you will observe that all the moisture gets evaporated and the soil compacts itself into a hardened substance. So if you cover the topsoil, this is an event which will not happen. Reduction of runoff and erosion. So here, if you cover the topsoil, no erosion, improvement in soil structure, and weed control, that is the growth of unwanted plants here and there, that will also not happen. So that is basically the aspect of mulching in general. Okay. Now, that is the portion of agriculture that we have covered overall till now. What is it that we have covered in agriculture? So we have covered the portions where we have talked about types of agriculture, to be carried out across the world. Okay. Where we have taken a look at what kinds of agriculture: primitive subsistence, intensive subsistence, then we have taken a look into, let's say, commercial farming, and also commercial and livestock farming. Then after that, we have taken a look at the cropping patterns. Okay. You have the monocultivation or monocropping and multi-cropping. We have taken a look at the different types of multi-cropping, where we have taken a look at three types. That is intercropping, mixed cropping, and also sequence cropping. Then after that, we have taken a look at the cropping seasons. That is Rabi, Kharif, and Zayed. Kharif and Zayed crops. Okay. Then after that, we have taken a look at the major crops. Crop types, the conditions required, the regions where they are grown. Then also we have taken a look at sericulture, right? Rearing of silkworms. We have taken a look at the 4 major types of silk produced in India, their properties as well. What were those? You had mulberry, then muga, tasar, and eri. Then we have taken a look at the methods of irrigation. There we have taken a look at the traditional methodologies like tank, canal, wells, tube wells, and also the modern methodologies like drip, sprinkler irrigation. So we have taken a look at the methodologies and also the factors which determine what kind of cultivation can be carried out or what kind of irrigation is carried out in which part of the country. That is also something we have taken a look at. Then after that, we have taken a detailed look at green revolution. After that, we have taken a look at agroclimatic zones. Okay. We have also taken a look at the organic farming. A type of organic farming is also something we have looked at, that is ZBNF. We have meanwhile also taken a look at agro and social forestry. So these are the detailed factors that we have studied in this particular portion of agriculture. Just a kind of a revision, repetition of these quite frequently, if it is carried out along with the portion of current affairs, will more than suffice for your requirement of the examination. Now here, please understand, when we were talking about this organic farming and ZBNF, it also has got associated disadvantages to it. That also has got certain disadvantages. What are the disadvantages of that organic farming when we talk about? First of all, we have no clue about the productivity, right? We have no clue about the productivity, how it will be impacted. Then after that, right, we don't have the aspect of a surety that input cost will be reduced. Why? Because let's assume the components that are said to be applied in, let's say, a methodology of organic farming, that is ZBNF, you need cow dung, cow urine, various different edible lime, etc. Now, this is always presuming that a large or a farmer will have that cattle in his house, that there will be an easy access to cow dung and cow urine. But that is not the case, is it? In case of small farmers, you don't have the presence of these materials. So it is not exactly zero budget. And it cannot always end up promising a kind of an economic remuneration or an economic parity. So you have certain disadvantages. We have seen the case of Sri Lanka, that how in Sri Lanka, when suddenly it was forced upon the entire country to implement organic farming. All of a sudden, agriculture completely collapsed. So organic farming, when promoted slowly and steadily, has got a scope to catch up. But when pushed in or shoved in suddenly, it has got its drawbacks also. Now, finally, we take up the factor of issues in agriculture. The issues that we face in agriculture. So, what are the various issues that we face? First of all, the first major issue is what? It is basically small size of land holdings, right? And that basically is represented by the fact that 87% of the farmers are small and marginal. So obviously, the productivity from the small farmlands will also be very small, right? Then after that, another issue, lack of technological and machine usage. Okay, technology and machinery usage is restricted to few of the large commercial farmlands. It is not prevalent all across. So that is a major drawback. Then after that, lack of crop diversification. Increased focus or attention on food grains. And that is why food grains will always have a limited return. But if you start growing, let's say, vegetables and fruits, not only will there be a greater amount of nutrition available to the people who consume them, but at the same time, farm income can increase by close to around 8 to 12 times. So that is why crop diversification is required. Then after that, lack of storage space. Now, all this production that you carry out, that needs to be stored somewhere. Now, we don't have enough storage spaces. Now, the answer ideally on the tip of the tongue would be that why doesn't government build all these storage spaces? The government doesn't have enough resources to do that. The government doesn't have enough money to do that. And nowhere across the world is the government going to build up all the storage spaces unless and until you are an oil rich country, you have an endless amount of revenue coming from oil, or if you are a very small country, there you can have the government, and the government is revenue surplus always. There the government can carry out this process. But in larger economies, you'll always find that it is the private participation which allows the building of these storage spaces, because the private participation has got the money to spend. But here, private participation is not allowed. Then, after that, farm to table inflation. The price at which the farmer sells his or her crop to the market, that is not the price that you and I pay when we go to buy that product. We end up paying 10 times, 20 times, 30 times more to be on the minimum side. And this farm to table inflation in India is amongst the highest in the world, right? So the second number is associated with Brazil, but that also comes at a distant second. So the farm to table inflation means that while the consumers are shelling out huge sums, the farmers, they are not getting the benefits. So overwhelming role of middlemen. And these are powerful people. The middlemen who control the markets, the APMCs, etc. These are powerful people. You cannot, if any, let's say you go to a village in, let's say near Kapurthala in Punjab. Now, if you explore the farmers market there, you'll find that 2 to 3 powerful people, they will be running the entire show. And you cannot in any case as a farmer, you cannot dare to have a conflict with them, be it over pricing, be it over selling, anything, because they are powerful enough to ensure that you are ostracized from that market completely, that nobody will buy your product ever. So as a poor farmer who doesn't have the capacity to, let's say, send his or her product somewhere else, you have got no choice left. You will have to pay these middlemen, and they charge exorbitant sums of money. So that is the role of middlemen, which also carries out to the price. Then, lack of research and development. Okay. Then, ignorance of indigenous varieties of seeds in favor of HYV seeds. Then, after that, inefficient market mechanism. Then, after that, we have talked about lack of technology, crop diversification, storage spaces. So, these are few of the major factors. If I number it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, if we have to talk about, then lack of awareness amongst farmers. Okay, please don't write, never write illiteracy. I've seen many of the candidates writing that farmers are illiterate, hence there is this problem. Never write that. Literacy has got nothing to do with farm productivity. Awareness has got something to do. Literacy and illiterate is a very negative term. Always ensure that you never use that term for anywhere, right? Especially when you are trying to get into the services, never use that term. Use the politically correct term, that is lack of awareness. Okay. Over reliance on fertilizers. And these fertilizers, by the way, they are imported, right? So this also brings about significant amount of import bill. Then lack of irrigation facilities. Almost 60% of the farmlands today, they still don't have the available assured source of irrigation. Then after that, you have the aspect lack of irrigation facilities. We have talked about lack of value addition to the crops, lack of processing facilities. Then lack of enough number of cooperatives and farmers organization. Okay, so these are a list of issues that are prevalent in the Indian agriculture where there is a scope for improvement. And this is purely talking in the frame of geographical aspect. When you study the portion of agriculture from an economic aspect, there also you will come across APMC, MSP, FRPs. So FRP is for sugar pricing, etc. So there also you will come across a host of issues. This is a question asked in GS paper 3. Agriculture is a question that you will find in GS paper 3 in the mains. So when you are facing that question of agriculture, be sure that you have to mix and interrelate both the economic as well as the geographical perspective. It should not be that today I'm in a mood to only talk about geographical perspective or economic perspective, so I will talk only about that. No, represent both of them. Now, Roshan, you had asked about the farm to table inflation. This basically talks about that what is it when we talk about the price at which, let's say, the farmer sells his tomato to the market. The farmer sells that tomato maybe at 2 rupees per kilo or 3 rupees per kilo. And when you and I, we go to buy that same tomato in the market, we end up paying maybe around 30, maybe around 20, somewhere around that. So on an average, the price increases by almost 10 times, which is quite substantial. And this is just one example. You have many other examples. And yes, another point you can point out, overemployment, right? Or disguised unemployment, that you have increased section of population which is present in the agricultural role, due to which the farm income is in decline. Okay, right? I hope that is understood. Now, processing facilities, what issues with processing facilities? See, we don't have enough processing facilities in the form of food parks, etc., which are present, which will add value to the product, which will add value to the food grains, and which will churn out multiple different products, let's say from ragi. Ragi can have multiple different products. Ragi wafers can be there. You have very different types of ragi flour, which is also there. Grains themselves are utilized separately. So they can have multiple products provided there's a processing facility. So that is why processing facility is required. Pankaj, value addition to the crops. Basically, yesterday we talked about the fact that if, let's say, United States is producing close to around 25% of the maize of the entire world, but there you will not come across the fact that the farmers, let's say, they are experiencing a glut in income. Why? Because that maize which is produced, after that, see, when you go to the market outside, just take a simple example. You go to the market and you try to buy a corn. Maize is corn basically. Now that corn will be sold to you maybe at rupees 5, maybe at rupees 10, depending upon which part of the country that you go to. Now, if that same corn is utilized to make corn flour, that will be sold to you at maybe 200. If that same corn is used to make alcoholic beverages, that will be sold to you at rupees 300. If the same corn is utilized, let's say, in simplest of the terms, to make popcorn, that in itself will cost you around 50 to 100. Then if the same corn is utilized, let's say, to manufacture artificial sweeteners, that will cost you much more. So that is how you add value to the crops, right? If you sell the crops directly, what you have produced, you will never be able to earn significantly. So that is why value addition is something which is required. Okay, I hope that is understood. Now, after that, we come across to the portion of minerals and industries. Now, minerals and industries here, This sometimes gets relevant for your prelims, but very factual kind of random questions are asked. So here always I would ask you, please don't chase the factual questions in the prelims when you are referring to the PYQs. Don't go for random minerals which have been asked. So UPSC does this. Even this year's paper, you will find this as a trend. The paper is being held. Even today, you will find this trend that you will have a couple of very factual questions, very fact based, that majority of the candidates, 99.9% of the candidates, are not aware of. That point one might have chanced upon that fact sometime in his or her life, and they would also not have studied that, or maybe someone will get the correct answer by a guesswork. But once UPSC does this, that is enough to sow the seeds of doubt in the mind of the candidate. Now, what the candidate starts doing is they start chasing those facts. Now, UPSC had once asked, it had given four of the minor minerals, it had asked which of this is a minor mineral. And there, immediately students panicked because nobody knew about that. Why would someone learn the entire list of so many minerals classified as major and minor? But UPSC did that, asked one question. Now, what happened was the candidates, rather than stressing on the basics where the questions are also asked from, they put their entire energy that next year I will learn the entire minor and major minerals. The problem is that we treat UPSC as a board exam. That board exams, we are trained psychologically. Look at the previous year question, that will be repeated, learn it up, you will score very good in board exam. And we follow the same ideology in UPSC as well. But in the case of UPSC, UPSC did not repeat that question ever again. So imagine still today you will have, even last night, I had a mail from one of the candidates who is going to appear, who is appearing today. And his problem was very simple, that I have studied everything, but I have not managed to learn the major and minor minerals. Please help me out. Is there any shortcut to learn that? I simply replied, please don't. If there is a question which comes for that, leave it. Right? Because even if one factual question comes there, generally your following of current affairs will help you there. But if, let's say, a very random question comes, leave that question. The cutoff for prelims last year was how much? 88. Right? For 88, how many questions you need to get correct? Even if you get 50 correct, right? Even if you get 50 correct out of, let's say, an attempt of 70, that still brings you in that ballpark. So there, please don't touch these type of factual questions. Don't chase these type of factual questions. There are certain portions from minerals and industries that you can attack in order to have a better proficiency. For example, for the prelims, you can look at major types of minerals, their distribution. And in this PPT, I have provided you a kind of a list, okay, a detailed list for where these minerals are to be found. For all of us who are interested in learning that, I have provided that list for metallic and non-metallic minerals, okay, right? And then in the mains, mostly here, this will be current affairs oriented. Current affairs oriented. In the mains, you can expect a question to be asked from the portion of location of industries. Okay? Factors contributing to the location. To location. That can be asked in the mains exam. So let us take a look at the minerals and industries portion. First of all, when we talk about minerals, these are basically the resources that are present naturally in the environment, in the planet. And these resources, they are utilized by us for various different purposes in general. Now, there's a broader classification of minerals, something that you would have studied in your class 6th or 7th standard. And that is basically the minerals being classified as metallic mineral, right? Metallic mineral means they will have certain properties. For example, they will be malleable. Malleable means you can hammer them out into very thin sheets. They can be ductile. You can stretch them out in the form of long wires without them being breaking, right? They are sonorous in property. That is, when you hit them, there is a metallic sound which is emitted. They are generally good conductors of heat and electricity. So these are the characteristics of metallic minerals. Then you have non-metallic. For example, mica, salt, sulfur, potash, etc. So these are your non-metals. Means that here they are brittle in nature, for example. They don't have that shine. Brittle means they will break very easily. They don't have that associated shine. When you hit them, you don't have that sonorous property. And then you also have energy minerals, coal, petroleum, natural gas. We have already taken a look at how petroleum, natural gas are created. Here, we will also take a look at how coal is formed. Now, before moving into few of the minerals for discussion, we will talk about where is it that these minerals are to be found. In which part of the planet or in which part of the surface do we have the presence of these minerals in general? Okay, now here, when we talk about minerals, they can be found in igneous, metamorphic, sedimentary deposits everywhere. So, in the case of igneous and metamorphic rocks, you'll find the minerals to exhibit a property where the minerals are oftentimes found in a kind of a crack, right? In a crack or a fault which is present, there you will have mineral deposits which would have come there at the time of solidification itself. Or you can also end up finding minerals in a kind of a nodules, a concentrated form, right? So these are what are referred to as veins, and these are what are referred to as lodes. That is where in chunk a mineral is to be found in one particular place. That is where you have the prospect of veins and lodes. Then after that, we also have the minerals to be found in sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks are formed how? By deposits, by layers of deposits, isn't it? It can absolutely be possible that while this deposit was happening, there was, let's say, iron ore, which was deposited in the process. You also have the presence of coal in the sedimentary rocks. Remember, in the portion of rocks, we had studied the organic sedimentary rocks. There we had studied about coal. So those are also the areas where you can find these minerals. Then you also have the formation where, let's say, there is a chemical disintegration happening or a chemical erosion or a chemical weathering which is happening. Let's suppose a particular rock, right, that consists of significant chunk of calcium, and the rest of it, let's say, is bauxite. Bauxite is an ore of aluminium. Now, over a period of time, this breaks, weathers down, there's a chemical erosion, and you are left with the residue ore. So that is also how sometimes minerals can be found. Then placer deposits. We have studied placer deposits at the time of continental drift, the theory of continental drift, if you recall. There we have studied the placer deposits. Placer deposits are what? If you have a source rock here, right? And if you have, let's say, the presence of a certain kind of a mineral, gold, platinum, silver, any of the substance which is not soluble in water. And if the river drains from here, this river will be carrying these particles, all these particles will be depositing them somewhere here. So these are your placer deposits. and these are your source rocks. So there also minerals can be found. So you have gold, silver, tin, platinum. These are found in the form of placer deposits. In Chota Nagpur Plateau, you had the gold deposits being carried out by river Subarnarekha significantly. Subarnarekha is an east-flowing river. Then, for example, in the case of the ocean depths also, sometimes you will find that all the various different mineral components and composition that you have in the various salts which are present in the ocean, they end up concretizing, they end up compacting together, they end up solidifying together, and they form what are referred to as polymetallic nodules. Polymetallic nodules. They are referred to as polymetallic nodules because they will consist of multiple metals at the same time. They can consist of nickel, chromium, cobalt, many of the rare earth elements as well. For example, some of them will also contain lithium. Some of them might also consist boron. So there will be the presence of many different elements, many different elemental presence. And that is what is polymetallic nodules. It is for extraction of these polymetallic nodules that India has launched the very ambitious Samudrayan mission in order to get access to these polymetallic nodules in general. Okay, so now we come to the portion of the distribution of minerals in India. We'll follow the logic of the distribution. Before that, we'll take a break. Okay, we'll take a break for 15 minutes and we'll be back, and then we will be following this particular mineral distribution and the location of industries. So take a break, guys, for 15 minutes, and let's be back. A confirmation about the audio, please. Analysis of prelims, Nitesh, will be it will be a live discussion on YouTube, which will be held at 7 p.m. and there we will have the discussion separately. So we'll have a separate discussion for polity, for economy, for science and tech, for geography, environment, ecology, and there you'll get an idea about the answer key. Okay, so for the analysis of the paper, join us at 7 p.m. If we go at physiographic division, mineral distribution becomes easy. Yes. So when we talk about the mineral distribution of the country, here and mineral distribution and the types of minerals that you find on the in the various parts of the country, here an idea about the physiographic division is very relevant and is very important as well, because we have seen about the formation of the different portions. We have looked at how is it that different portions they have been created, when they have been created. We have taken a look that the oldest part of the country, the oldest portions of the country, is basically the peninsular part of the country. Now, it is in those areas that we have seen that it is the top portion which has now been eroded, which has been weathered, which has been carried away. And that is why it is in those areas that the mineral rich regions, they are now exposed to the outside environment because the top portion has been eroded and has been removed. So typically the mineral rich regions of the country, you'll find to be concentrated around those older portions. For example, the Chota Nagpur Plateau, the Bastar Plateau, the Karnataka Plateau, and also parts of the Bundelkhand and Aravali region. So these are your major areas across the country where you will find a host of various different minerals. So overall, only around 11 states, they account for 90% of the total amount of operational mines which are present in the country. Okay. Yes, in Malwa also some amount of minerals are to be found, but mostly in the region around Aravalis. So this is the basic mineral distribution. Now we'll take a look at the major minerals to be found, some of the properties and where they are found. So starting with iron ore. Iron ore is also regarded as a very important mineral when it comes to the developmental requirements of the country. There, iron ore has got a significant role to play, in the sense that when we talk about iron ore, think about it that even if you want to construct a highway, think about it that if you want to construct any building, you want to construct any airport, anything, you do require the usage of steel, and steel is manufactured from iron ore. So that is why iron and steel is also considered to be the basis for the developmental requirement of any particular country. Now here iron ore is of various different types depending upon the concentration of iron in them. So accordingly, you can have a basic classification as magnetite, which is the purest form of iron. Right here you will have in this ore, you will have close to around 60 to 70% of iron, 75% of iron in certain cases to be present there. Then you have hematite. Now, hematite is the one where approximately 60% of iron will be present in the ore. So that means if you have 100 kgs of ore, in that almost 60 kg will be pure iron. So this is the one which is used mostly for the industrial processes. This is for majority of the industrial purposes. Industrial processes. Then magnetite, by the way, because it has got such a huge amount, such a rich quantity of iron which is present. So magnetite is used for very specific purposes. Specific purposes such as electrical industry, in order to have magnetic materials and the manufacturing of materials which need the magnetic properties to work. Only there you have magnetite which is used. And then you have the poorer grades of iron ore, that is limonite and siderite. Now, limonite and siderite, they consist of very low quantum or low quantity of iron in that ore, and that is why it is not significantly utilizable for industrial purposes. So, magnetite is the finest quality of ore which is present, and where the iron content is up to 70%, right? You will have a 70% of iron content present in that. Excellent magnetic qualities and valuable in electrical industry. Significantly, it has got a very specific utility. It cannot be used anywhere and everywhere because such pure grade of iron has got a very high magnetic property associated. Now, this magnetite ore is to be found in regions of Karnataka, in regions of Rajasthan, and also in regions, if you talk about Andhra Pradesh, right? Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Rajasthan. These are the four regions where you will find a lot of these magnetite minerals to be found. UPSC had asked a question about this in 2018. And the question which was asked in the prelims was, it was a multi-statement question where one of the option was that iron is to be found in Rajasthan. Now, when the candidates, they normally apply their logic, obviously at the time of prelims you have significant amount of panic which strikes, but the candidates, when they apply their logic, they think about it that Rajasthan is a desert. Why will you find iron in that? But iron is to be found in the older areas, that is in the areas around Aravalis, etc. You'll find the presence of iron. Then after that, we have the hematite. Now, hematite is the one which is used for industrial purposes. Now, across the country, it is to be spread and famously found in large quantums in four major belts. One is the Odisha Jharkhand belt. So, this will involve the region around Singhbhum district in Jharkhand, Singhbhum, Mayurbhanj area. Mayurbhanj is a mineral rich region in Odisha. So it is in that belt that you will find significant amount of hematite. Then Durg, Bastar, Chandrapur belt, that is the associated region between Chhattisgarh, the southern part of Chhattisgarh, and the adjoining portion of eastern Maharashtra. Chandrapur is a mineral rich region in Maharashtra. So that is where you will find them. That is in the Bastar plateau. Then Karnataka, very significant resource of iron is to be found in Karnataka. So in the region of Chikmagalur, Chitradurg, Tumkur, Bellary belt, that is where you will find significant amount of these iron deposits. You would have heard about the very famous Bellary brothers who were famous for the iron ore mining. Now, obviously, they became a part of the political setup also. So they were a part of that iron ore mining group. So this is a region which is particularly rich in iron. Now, you will also find various different iron rich areas. In particular, for example, take the case of Kudremukh, Kudremukh Reserve. Now, Kudremukh reserves, basically, these are one of the high iron containing areas and regions in the entirety of the country. And here, the name basically is very simple. Kudremukh, the name is associated in the local language as a horse's mouth. And it is that region which is so very rich in iron. You have many different iron-based industries around Kudremukh. And that also ends up oftentimes getting entangled in controversies because of the fact that here you also have significant amount of biodiversity. You have the Kudremukh protected area also. So in the process of mining, many of the times that local or the natural biodiversity, the natural ecosystem is also damaged. And then you have the Maharashtra Goa belt, that is around the region of Ratnagiri. Now in Goa, you will always come across that significant presence of red soil. And that red coloration is attained because of the presence of iron in them. That is why you have the presence of red soil in them. So that is where you have the Maharashtra Goa belt. And this is very, very, now here mining has been banned, and that is because of the fact that it was causing significant damage to the eco-sensitive zone of Western Ghats. So that is where you had various committees which were set up by the government, like the Gadgil committee. You had also the formation of Kasturi Rangam committee. All of them, they recommended a ban on mining activities in these regions. Now that has brought about an associated set of problems in Goa as well, where a lot of population or a significant chunk of population which would be dependent on that mining as a source of income, they were impacted quite significantly. Then we come across the mineral that is manganese. Now, manganese is very important for the manufacturing of steel, right? Whenever you end up manufacturing steel, manganese is always required. So, nearly 10 kg of manganese is required to manufacture 1 ton of steel in general. So that is where the requirement is significant. Other than that, even for paints, insecticides, bleaching powder, manganese is utilized. Here also, you'll find the same areas to be dominant in manganese as you would have observed the areas dominant in iron. That is Odisha, Karnataka, parts of Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Goa. So here, please understand the trend. And the trend is very simple. It is these older areas, the peninsular part of the plateau, which is going to be rich in these mineral deposits. When we talk about aluminium, now aluminium basically is extracted from the ore, that is bauxite. Now, this aluminium, the extraction process is a complicated process overall. Initially, you have the bauxite which is used, and from bauxite, you get alumina, a whitish powdery substance, that is alumina, that will be having Al2O3, that is the oxide of aluminium. And from there, a reduction process is carried out. Reduction process is when you remove oxygen. So it is the opposite of oxidation. So that reduction process will be carried out, and then eventually you will have aluminium, which is manufactured. Aluminium has got a wide scale implication, wide scale property. Why? Because aluminium is not only lightweight, aluminium is also very strong, right? So that is why aluminium uh, as a particular mineral will find its utility in not only electrical industry, will also find its utility in aircraft industry, in automobile industry. In all of these areas, you will find the presence of aluminium in general. Okay, right? Are Chitradurga and Chitradurg same place? So it is the same place, right? So it is almost it is the same place. You don't have another Chitradurga and another Chitradurg. It is Chitradurg, which is oftentimes written with A at the end. Okay, Shumain. I hope that is clear. Okay. Now, here, bauxite deposits in India are to be found in the region of Amarkantak Plateau, the Maikal Hill region, and also the plateau of Bilaspur Katni in Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh. So some stretches of this bauxite you will find even in southern part of Uttar Pradesh, southeastern part of Uttar Pradesh, extending into Madhya Pradesh, the central lower portion of Madhya Pradesh, the portion of associated region in Chhattisgarh also. And you will also end up finding it in certain other stretches in the Western Ghats and also some parts of Odisha. So Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, these are your bauxite rich regions across the country. Okay. Then you have copper. Now, copper is again going to indicate very good conductivity. Now, copper is used in increased quantity in the electrical industry for the formation of or the building of wires, etc. Copper is used. Now, when we talk about copper, here, India doesn't have enough source or supply of copper. India is deficient and faces critical amount of deficiency in terms of copper supply. So, what does that basically turn out, or what it pans out into, is the fact that when we have a phase of development where electrification for all is being stressed upon, electrical supply and electrical equipments are increasing in terms of their demand and applicability. So, there the utility of copper in the coming days is going to only increase. And copper in India is not something which is being used for the first time. Copper in India has been in use for a long period of time. Even during the time of the Bronze Age, when you read ancient history, you come across the Bronze Age, Iron Age, and so on. So, even let's say when you talk about the conditions of the Bronze Age, there also copper was used to manufacture bronze. Now, at that point of time, by metallurgical analysis, we have come to a conclusion that the copper being used at that point of time, that would be extracted either from the Khetri mines in Rajasthan or from the Hazaribagh plateau. So, even at that point of time, thousands of years ago, you had the extraction of copper which was happening in India. Even today, those are the regions which are particularly rich in terms of the copper deposits that you come across. So, here you will find that copper is malleable and ductile. Malleable means what? That if you hit a particular material, it will get stretched and expanded into a sheet without breaking. That is malleability. And when we refer to the ductile nature or ductile characteristic, means you will have the ability to stretch out very thin wires out of copper without breaking it easily. So that is of increased use in industrial purposes. Okay, so chemical industries, electronics, electrical cables, everywhere you'll find the utility of copper. So here, Balaghat mines in Madhya Pradesh, Khetri mines in Rajasthan, Singhbhum district of Jharkhand, that is basically the region around the Hazaribagh plateau. These are the mineral rich areas, right, of copper. And Rajasthan has got the largest resource of copper ore. So observe, copper ore in Rajasthan is close to around 669 million tons. Out of that, around 4 million tons will be copper. So out of 669 million tons of ore, you'll be able to extract 4 million tons of copper. So that gives you an idea about the presence of minerals in these ores. Okay. Now, then we have limestone. It is a non-metal. Now, this limestone is formed as a result of sedimentary deposits. It is formed as a result of sedimentary deposits in marine areas. We have talked about the formation of limestone while we were discussing about rocks. So I don't know if you recall, but basically when we had discussed this, we had talked about the fact that in those particular areas where you have, let's say, the significant, those areas which were underwater for a very long time, which have remained underwater, there you had the calcareous animals and species, shell bearing animals. Now it is the deposition of these shells which is rich in calcium carbonate, and that has basically substantiated into limestone. So all the regions that where you find limestone as of now, just think about it, that those regions at one point of time would have lied underneath the massive oceans that we see today. And due to various tectonic processes and uplift, that region is now above water. So here, limestone, if you observe the layering, which indicates the sedimentary properties of limestone. Now, this is very, very rich in calcium carbonate. In calcium carbonate. Now, calcium carbonate has got a binding property, and that binding property is utilized in order to manufacture cement. So that is why limestone is a very important component, a very important raw material for manufacturing of cement. Other than that, limestone is also used quite significantly. So one of the utility is the cement industry. Cement industry. The other utility of limestone that you will come across is the utility across iron and steel industry. Iron and steel industry. In iron and steel industry, when you melt the entire substance in order to extract iron, you do it in a blast furnace where the temperatures are to be very, very high. And that is where, in order to manufacture or the blast furnace or build the blast furnace, the internal lining should be made of a substance which is able to withstand very high temperatures. And that is where limestone is significantly used in those areas. So that is where you'll find the utility of limestone in general. Okay. So, found in association with rocks composed of calcium carbonates or magnesium carbonates, generally found in sedimentary rocks of most geological formations. So, it is the basic raw material for cement industry, essential for smelting iron in the blast furnaces. So, iron and steel industry also. Karnataka is one of the leading states, followed by Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Rajasthan, Meghalaya, Chhattisgarh. Meghalaya is also one of the areas very significantly rich in limestone. You will have a lot of limestone caves. And wherever you have limestone caves and or limestone rocks, what kind of topography or landform is observed in those areas? Let me check if we remember anything that we have covered earlier. If in any region you have the overwhelming predominance of limestone, what kind of rocks or what kind of topography and landforms are to be found in that area? Let me know. Any of us? So I hope we remember the portion of geomorphology or we have forgotten it completely. Good, Shilpa, finally. It is basically the karst topography that you find there, right? So there you will find the caves, the stalactites, the stalagmites. Those are to be found in the regions where you will find a lot of limestone deposits. So please try to interrelate those particular portions. Okay, only then your level of understanding will improve. You will be able to then cite examples of these karst topographical features in India also. Okay, so please have that association. And then we talk about mica. Mica basically is a kind of a non-metal, which is a very good insulator for that matter. Good insulator in the sense that here it does not allow the flow of heat or electricity from one end to the other. Now, this mica, if you observe, mostly you'll find that it is arranged in very thin layer or sheet-like format. Very thin layer or sheets. So in a small thickness, it can have multiple number of these sheets. It has got a very good dielectric strength. Dielectric strength basically refers to the ability of the material to hold its physical state without breaking when you have very high voltage or current which is applied across both ends of it. So that is the property that you find in the case of mica. So mica, significant and excellent dielectric strength, very low power loss factor, and good insulating properties where it is resistant to very high voltage. So mica is one of the most indispensable mineral or material used in the electrical and electronic industry. So when you have to manufacture large scale insulators, when you have to manufacture, let's suppose, the capacitors, when you have to manufacture circuit breakers in electrical industries, mica is the chosen material. Dielectric strength basically refers to when you have a particular substance, any particular state of matter, and there on both ends, if you are applying very high amount of voltage or very high amount of electric current on both ends, basically the material should not break. The material should be able to hold its own. So that is a dielectric strength. Generally, when you come across short circuit, etc., why does it happen? You will observe that the insulator simply melts away or breaks down under the application of very high amount of electricity or voltage. So that is something which mica does not go through. Mica is to be found in very large quantities in the regions of Rajasthan, in the regions of Jharkhand also. So the quantity is so high that if you ever drive down around the region of Ajmer and Pushkar, on the roadsides also you will come across the mica which is embedded in small quantities, obviously, very trace quantities. They are embedded in the rocks thereby. Same is the case if you end up traveling around, let's say, in the region of Jharkhand, around Dhanbad, Bokaro, all the way to Hazaribagh. There also you will come across these kinds of mica embedded within the rock. So mica is to be found in significant quantity. Now, mica bearing pegmatite, which is the ore, which is to be found in Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Bihar, and Rajasthan. Rajasthan alone accounts for 51%, okay, followed by Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Bihar. Okay. For further reference in this chapter, NCRT will be more or less covered by this module itself, Shomain. What I would suggest to you, if you have to go for further referencing of it, please don't explore any more books there. There is no point becoming an expert in where what minerals are to be found if questions are not asked in the examination. So always, if you will find a question to be asked from this particular portion, you will find that the portion which is asked, which is used, is basically from the current affairs. So rather than doing more research and trying to be a mineralogist, please don't do that. Just refer to the portion of current affairs, and this basic portion, along with the additional reading materials, is more than sufficient, my dear friend. But even if, let's say, you are interested in studying more, you can explore the portion of NCRT. That will be more than sufficient as per the requirement of the exam. Okay. Yes, Roshan, that is sufficient. Only PPT plus additional reading materials, that will be sufficient here. Is NCRT syllabus changed? Okay. So you have also caught up the headlines, the viral headlines doing the news. So see, even if the NCRT syllabus has changed, the syllabus of UPSC has not changed, has it? So for us, mere mortals who apply for UPSC and who want to succeed in civil services, it doesn't matter what that news headline is all about. Okay. So for us, who is basically going to study for civil services, as long as UPSC does not issue a notification that from now on these areas will not be asked or these areas will only be asked, please don't end up changing your approach at all. It is very easy to get caught up with the portion of these masala news which get floated that, you know what, this portion has been taken from NCRT, this portion has been brought in NCRT. There's a whole lot of political dispensation going around. Never get involved in that. Okay, this is what this services is about. This services is about being apolitical as much as possible. Okay, because see, the you cannot blame the news people as well, or the news anchors, because they have to make this issue as big as it can be, right? That this chapter has been removed from NCRE. Now what will happen? Now the entire calamity will fall upon the world, or this chapter is not being taught, so that means now the people will grow dumb. No, it is not like that, right? UPSC will still ask you questions from the portions that it used to ask. UPSC will still remain very, very same, because various different administrations have come, have gone, various different changes have been brought into curriculum. They have been introduced, they have been withdrawn significantly. For example, you will find, even if the aspect of NCRTs, you also follow the conundrum of old NCRT or new NCRT, right? Whenever we talk with any new aspirant, they have the basic question: should we study the old NCRT or the new NCRT? Because there has been a phase where all the older NCRTs were revised, and you had a very different kind of NCRT which had been written, where two random people will be having a conversation that, Suchitra, why is it that you will have this mineral there? And Suchitra will reply a random name which is given in the NCRT. Suchitra will reply that, this is the reason, that is why. So new NCRT, old NCRT, materials or the portions to be covered are still the same, right? So please let us rise above that political discussion. Now, so this is where mica is to be found in general. And then we have coal. Now, coal is formed by a process which is referred to as carbonification. Carbonification. Carbonification is a process whereby all the trees in large scale, in the case of the forests, when they die, you have fossilization of the wood. So the trees, when they die, they get deposited in the form of various different layers. Okay? They get deposited in the form of various different layers. And when they get deposited in the form of various different layers, that is where eventually on top of them as well, you have further more deposits which happen. And these deposits will exert the weight, and under the pressure, high amount of pressure, and also the higher temperature which is gained, you'll find that this wood and this woody substrate, that gets converted slowly and steadily, because please understand, even that wood is dominated by carbon. All the living species, they are basically carbon based species on the planet. So these are dominated by carbon. So over a period of time, when there is increased compression, there is carbonification which comes through. And that carbonification means that all the carbon which is present starts concentrating around. So that is where you have this getting converted into coal. Now, that process of conversion of wood into coal is a very slow process. It takes millions of years. So if, let's say, the carbonification, or let's say the fossilization would have happened 300 million years ago, now that would mean that in that long time period, all that carbon would have concentrated in a better manner. So in the substance that you will extract, it will be completely dominated by carbon. In a region, let's say, where carbonification has happened only around 20 million years ago, in that region, some significant portion of wood would not have gotten converted into carbon yet. And that is where the coal will have woody properties. So based upon the carbon content, on the basis of the carbon content that you have, coal is subdivided into 4 types: anthracite, bituminous, peat, or rather, first let's talk about lignite, and then peat. Now, the carbon content is maximum in anthracite, containing close to around 90 to 95% of carbon content. So obviously, when you burn anthracite, you will get the highest amount of energy as a consequence. The total amount of energy generated will be very, very high in the case of anthracite. Then let's suppose you have the case of bituminous. Bituminous consists of, now think about it, if anthracite consists of around 90 to 95% of carbon in certain cases, always above 80% in general. So in those cases, you will observe that the impurities will be very less. So when you burn anthracite, you will get very little amount of smoke and complete amount of heat. Bituminous, slightly lesser amount of carbon, means some amount of impurities are present. That means when you burn bituminous, there will be significant amount of smoke, but also heat significantly produced. This is used for industrial processes. Industrial processes. Then we have lignite. Lignite is a rather impure form. Here, a complete carbonification would not have happened. So here, you will observe that slightly brownish tinges there. A lot of smoke is emitted. That much heat is not given out. So this lignite is used in small scale industries and so on. And then you have peat. Peat still retains that woody characteristic. If you break peat, it will break like a wood. If you burn it, more smoke, less amount of heat. So it is used for domestic purposes, for cooking, etc. Now, obviously, if the carbon content is very high in anthracite, that means the carbonification would have happened earliest in the case of anthracite. Wherever we find anthracite, that means carbonification would have happened earliest in that case. India doesn't have significant proportion of anthracite. In India, only in the region of Jammu Kashmir will you find the presence of anthracite. Okay. Other than that, in India, mostly you will find bituminous, lignite, and peat. Anthracite is to be found in regions such as Indonesia, in regions such as South Africa, Australia, North America, even in some portions of Europe, where carbonification started around 300, 350 million years back. In India, majority of the carbonification that we come across, that carbonification has happened only in the region or in the area around 200 million years back. So that is where majority of the coal deposits around the region of Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh that you come across, Godavari Basin, etc., Mahanadi Basin that you come across, there you will find bituminous coal to be present in dominance. Okay, so types of coal on the basis of carbon content. You have anthracite, that is the best grade of coal. So just like we had magnetite as the best grade of coal, so there also you have the conditions where 80 to 95% of carbon content, it is not significantly used for industrial purposes, right? It ignites slowly with a blue flame, has the highest calorific value, and is found in small quantities in the region of Jammu and Kashmir. For industrial purposes, the kind of coal which is used in a large scale, that is basically bituminous. Around 70 to 80% of carbon content, it has got a high calorific value. This is the one used for industrial processes. Is anthracite present in Ladakh or not? No. What gives you the clue that anthracite would be present in Ladakh? Is there any argument for that particular thing? Do we use anthracite for energy generation? No, we don't use anthracite for energy generation. The coal shortage that we end up encountering or we end up facing is because the grade of coal that you find in India is not of good grade. Not only does it have a very high sulfur content, but it also has significant amount of ash which is generated. Heat is which is generated is less. That is why India ends up importing coking coal or the industrial grade coal from the region of Indonesia, South Africa, and Australia. That is why oftentimes there is a shortage of coal supply for generation purposes. Okay. Chirantan, just coming out of the exam hall, UPSC played with us. Every questions had options like 1, 2, 3, 4 correct. Elimination method itself has been eliminated. Okay. But that is the case with everyone, isn't it, Chirantan? That is where it is a competition, that how you are able to hold your nerve. But I hope that the exam was a fruitful experience in the long run. And see, that aspect, that dialogue, that elimination method has been eliminated is still not correct. I will never be able to agree to that, that elimination is eliminated. UPSC always tends to leave some clue. It is a different matter altogether that in the pressure of that exam, in the pressure of the exam hall, many of the times we are unable to spot that clue. But again, that would be the case for every candidate, isn't it? So I have not yet gotten an opportunity to take a look at the question paper. So whatever I say is something which will be very shallow. So it won't be correct for me to have a proper uh, idea or a proper comment about what the question paper has been. I will take a look at it when we take a lunch break. That is between 1 to 2. I'll take a look at the question paper, and maybe after 2, when I get back, I will be able to have a better perspective. History is difficult this year. My friend, that is the nature of the subject, right? History, environment, geography, science, and tech. They are mostly on the verge of slightly being. The problem with history is that we restrict ourselves to only one particular source in many of the cases. And the questions which are asked are very random. And you will find that the questions that are asked, if you analyze carefully, all of us who are appearing for the next year, you have a scope to do that. Do one thing: analyze the questions which have appeared, search it on the internet. You'll find that in many of the questions, some or the other tangential discussion was there in the news for the past 1 year or more. Maybe that area was in discussion. Maybe that particular movement was in discussion. So nowadays, even the subjects like history, geography, there the pattern is being changed where current affairs is being made very dominant. So what we candidates end up doing as a kind of a mistake is we take a particular source of material, let's say, and we completely rely on it. We leave the portion of current affairs. That is a cardinal mistake which should not be done. All of us who are appearing for next year. But having said that, I've still not managed to take a look at the question. So any comment that I make right now will be completely shallow. Okay. So then here it is widely used and has high calorific value and is found in Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh. Today's new parliament important for next year. See, again, even if I tell you it is important for next year, people will concentrate on very wrong things when they have to study for the new parliament. People will study about the fact that where is it that these seers came from? What was the kind of mantras which were chanted? Where is it that the Sengol was placed? UPSC will not ask you a question about that. UPSC has already asked you a question based on the new parliament, and it was asked in 2021 and 20, or I think it was 2021, when UPSC had asked about Chaussat Yogini temple. That is because the architectural design was borrowed from of the new parliament was borrowed from that. So the problem is when we take a look at these current affairs, we stress upon what is being shown to us by the news channels and the media. And that is a very deeply political perspective, that this person has boycotted, this person has managed to come on board. So it is a very hodgepodge scenario. So if you manage to filter out that waste from the news, then it will be helpful. And go to the when, where, why, and how of each and everything, right, for the parliament. Then it will be helpful. Okay. I hope I'm making some sense. Then lignite, oftentimes brown in color, carries 40 to 55% of carbon content, and it is the intermediate stage which happens during the alteration of woody material into coal. So that means complete carbonification has not taken place in this case. It is still in the process of carbonification. So that is why it will also consist of moisture content. A significant quantity of moisture will be present, and that is why when it is burnt, it gives a lot of smoke. So it is to be found in the region of the Assam Plains, Rajasthan, and even Tamil Nadu. Then you have peat, very impure form, still very much having a woody characteristic. So it is in the first stage of transformation from wood to coal. So in these areas, let's say there would still have been a lot of material on top of that peat layer. Maybe in the next 20, 30 million years, they would have gotten converted into bituminous or lignite in that sense. Now in India, the coal that is found, that is basically divided into two types based on the time period in which the coal has been found. So accordingly, if you take a look at the coal to be found in India, they are divided into two types. One is the aspect of the older coal, right? That is the Gondwana grade coal. Gondwana coal. Now this coal has been formed around 200 million years ago. Carbonification was initiated almost 200 million years ago. Then you have the newer coal, which is obviously not going to be very rich in carbon content. That is your tertiary coal, where carbonification has happened recently. So this is where you get all the bituminous coal that you come around. Bituminous coal that you come across, that is to be found in the case of Gondwana grade of coal in general. So Gondwana coal deposits are about 200 million years old, and these are the major coal deposits of India. That is where you get the metallurgical coal. It is situated typically in Damodar Valley, West Bengal. It is where you will have the various different coal fields from Dhanbad to the region of aspect of, let's say, even when we talk about Raniganj. So in all those areas, you have the presence of this Gondwana grade coal, right? Very mineral rich area. Now, we had talked about one particular feature of river Damodar and Damodar Valley. What do you think during the time of the river systems? Damodar River is unique in the sense that where it flows. And that is because it is a rift valley. Just like in the case of Narmada and Tapi, Damodar also moves across a rift valley. And rift valley means there would have been a series of deposits carried long time earlier. And that is in those areas you'll find a lot of these coal deposits. Okay, so Jharia, Dhanbad, Raniganj, Bokaro, all of these are very rich coal fields. Other than that, Godavari, Mahanadi, Son, Wardha Valley, they are also to be found in the Gondwana Grade. Okay, Vimal, UPSC has successfully eliminated the element of elimination. Okay, fair enough. So, in general, how did you find the questions that is more relevant to be understood? Okay, maybe the elimination method has been removed, and the application of it has been removed in certain questions. So that is where you have to understand that, see, many of the times the options, the framing of the options is done in a certain manner to confuse the candidates. If you are well aware of the main question, so that is where you can apply your logic. But again, as I told you, I have not taken a look at the question till now. So coming back to it, when we talk about the Gondwana grade coal, now this is the one which has been used and which is being used for metallurgical properties and for the various metallurgical activities, industrial processes, etc. That is where Gondwana grade coal is typically to be used. Then we have the tertiary coal deposits, which are around 55 million years, very recent, and they are found in northeastern states, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Meghalaya. So these are mostly of lignite variety. Then here, you also come across the concept which is referred to as rat hole mining. Rat hole mining. What is this? So basically, what is done? In these coal bearing areas, if ever you have been to a region which has got a coal field, you will experience or you will come across this activity of rat hole mining. Now, in the case of rat hole mining, what is done is basically, let's suppose you have a coal seam. Here, let's suppose you have the presence of significant amount of coal in this region. And this has been depleted significantly, that there is not much of an economic use which can be taken, and you have some amount of coal which is left, right? Now what people will do is they will dig a small hole here, and that hole will be so small that you can only crawl through that region, and there they will be able to get to the region where the coal is present, and they will be able to crawl through, hack out that coal, extract it illegally, and then sell it in the market. That is what is referred to as rat hole mining in general. Now, this is a practice which is prevalent in states, which has been prevalent in states like Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Meghalaya, etc. for decades now. It is a decade-old practice. That is why I told you, if ever you want to, or if ever you happen to travel through these coal rich areas, now many of the times you'll find that in the middle of the wilderness, you'll find that a series of small bonfires, they are lit up at some distance. Obviously, a series of these bonfires are lit up, maybe sometimes in the middle of the forest, etc. But then upon closer examination, obviously in the middle of the night you won't have, you should not even go into following where the fire is in between the forest. But basically these are the regions from where these rat holes, they open up, and people, they work through the night, they extract the coal, and then again next morning they will disappear. You have thousands of families which are dependent on that illegal mining of coal. And the Coal India, the estimate that it provided in 2008, remember 2008, roughly 15 years back, the estimate that Coal India provided was that every year Coal India was losing close to around 8,000 to 9,000 crores because of rat hole mining. Now, obviously, you cannot bring to a halt, a complete halt, about this rat hole mining or illegal activity, because you have so much amount of population dependent on it. But this also paves way for disasters many of the times. For example, in Meghalaya, we had seen that rainwater enters into these holes, and all the people in that hole, they get drowned. Many of them, they lose their lives. Right? Now, another disaster which has been initiated by that rat hole mine is basically, for that mining, you need to carry some amount of light, some source of light. People carry a bonfire in order to help them see. Now, that is where, in one of these mishaps, fire was lit up in that coal seam, underground coal seam. And that was something which happened in the region of Jharia near Dhanbad. And this happened almost close to around 15 to 20 years back, even more than that. And the coal seams, they caught fire, and it is still burning. The entire region of Jharia, it has been turned into a kind of a desertified town now. You'll find that the land becomes extraordinarily hot because the coal seams underneath, they are burning. And also, as the underground is burning in random places, you have the land which simply starts to subside. So that is where this rat hole mining, or form of illegal mining, can end up causing major disasters. And Jharia is the ideal example in front of our face, where we see a town consumed by that illegal activity, and a town consumed by that fire underground. Okay? Yes, humanitarian concern in rat hole mining is there, that you will have people who are exposed to disasters, and you have larger disasters such as fire underground. And once the coal seam underground that catches fire, it is not easy to get rid of that fire, because that spreads over large distance and large thickness as well. So it is not easy to stop that fire. That is why, despite multiple efforts, it has been very futile exercise, to say the least. Now, then we come to industries and their classification. Industries is something that you would study significantly in the portion of economy. Now, here, when we talk about industries, we are referring to basically the aspect that what is an industry, and there we will be getting into the factors which determine the location of an industry. So, when we talk about an industry, industry is basically any particular place where raw materials are added value to, and a final product is then manufactured. So it is a production process in which you add value to the raw materials. Depending upon what is your final product and what is your raw material, you have the classification of industry into primary, secondary, and tertiary. When we say primary industries, these are mostly associated with nature. So the raw materials are mostly taken from the nature: fisheries, agricultural, agro-based industry, mining industry, quarrying industry. Those will be classified under primary industries. So here, they are very simple industry where the natural products are taken, very limited amount of value addition is done, and then you get the final output. So here value addition is usually minimal, and here basically coal mining and washing, oil refining, flour milling, metal smelting, stone crushing, they can be brought under the category of primary industries. Then you also have the case of secondary industries. Secondary industries are the one where many of the times the raw materials from the primary industries are used as, or basically the finished product from the primary industries are used as raw materials for the secondary industry. For example, after smelting, which is a primary industry, you extract a metal. Now, that metal is a raw material for a secondary industry, and you might end up manufacturing, let's say, a locomotive engine or a ship or an aircraft. All of that come under the category of secondary industry. So, obviously, in secondary industry, the amount of value addition which is done is going to be very, very substantial. High amount of value addition is carried out. So basically here you'll find many of these secondary industries, these are also subdivided into two types based upon the product that they come out with. So for example, you have the heavy industries, where the final product is going to be much heavier than the raw material. And then you also have what is referred to as the light industry. Right? So when we talk about heavy industries, so here basically you have the materials such as, or the output such as ships, airplanes, or aircrafts. These all come into the category of heavy industries, right? Locomotive manufacturing. So the final output is very heavy in general. So in this heavy industries, not only is the final output heavier, but also here you will mostly find that the industry is carbon intensive, that it will generate a lot of pollution in the process. The process of production will also be very, very costly. Whereas light industry, let's suppose this pen that we have, let's suppose a watch that we have, all these, they are your light industries. The final output is light. So it is more skill based rather than value based in terms of the value addition that you have. So overall, if you take a look at the classification of the secondary, heavy industries and light industries, heavy industries are identified by the nature of the bulky product or the high capital input that is utilized, and then they will oftentimes influence the environment in an adverse manner. Whereas the examples of it, heavy chemicals, heavy machinery, locomotive, shipbuilding, heavy electrical, all of that come in the category of heavy industries. Light industries. Light industry basically means that here, not very significantly capital intensive, the final output is lighter in weight, right? For example, you have watches, you have, let's say, in certain cases, electronic equipments. All of this comes under the case of light industry. Now, this can be established in very small areas. They are not particularly dependent on the availability of raw materials. So here also, we will come across a factor where you have another category of light industry, that is footloose industries. Footloose is an English term, English vocabulary. Footloose basically refers to something which is not dependent or fixated in one place, something which can move very easily from one region to another. So these are the industries which remain indifferent with locational aspect. That is these industries not dependent on the source of raw material, source of raw materials. They are not dependent on the source of raw materials. They are dependent mostly on the availability of skilled manpower. Mostly dependent on skilled manpower. So that is why these industries can be located anywhere out there. For example, take a look at it: watch, camera, diamond cutting, precision electronics, etc. Think about it. Watches of Switzerland are very famous. The Swiss watches, they are very costly. Now, why do you think that watchmaking industry in Switzerland is so popular? Is it because the raw material for watches are to be found there and not anywhere else? No, it is because of the craftsmanship, the skilled manpower. Take another example: diamond cutting. In India, India is one of those regions which is particularly well known for diamond cutting and polishing. Now, there, in the case of diamond cutting and polishing and making a jewelry out of it, which is the center in India or the place in India which is very well known, famous for diamond cutting and polishing? Are we aware of any of the place? Very good. Surat. Surat is famous for that, right? Now, in Surat, do we find diamonds in that region? Obviously not. So, in Surat, why is it that it is so very famous for diamond polishing? Skilled manpower. Take another example. A couple of years back, Samsung came and established one of the larger mobile manufacturing plants in the region of Noida, in the region around Noida, that is in the Delhi National Capital Region. Now, why do you think Samsung opened up a plant there? Is it because the raw materials are available there? No, availability of skilled manpower is there. That is why. So these are your industries which can be set up at any place where there is availability of skilled manpower. They are not raw material oriented. And that is what is the footloose industry, a characteristic of it. Okay. Then we have the tertiary industries. Tertiary industries basically in the sense of service providers. For example, airline industry. We have, let's say, Indigo, SpiceJet, Air India. Now, do they manufacture the planes on their own? Absolutely not. So, manufacturing of planes carried out by Boeing or Airbus, that will be a secondary industry and heavy secondary industry. Whereas manufacturing of, or basically running the service, operating the service of that airplane, that will be a tertiary service. Banks, restaurants, hotels, insurance, all of that is basically provision of services. That is what is included in the tertiary industry. Banking industry, insurance industry, consultancy industry, all of that, they are included in the tertiary sector. So that is basically the prime classification. Now we come to what are the factors based on which an industry is located in a place. Now, before that, let me give you a couple of pointers. Regardless of whatever you hear in the news headlines and the media reports and the various interviews given by the industrialists who will appear as if the God himself has reincarnated himself or herself on the planet Earth, and that is why we have got such good industrialists in nature. Any industry which is being opened up is opened up only for profit purposes, only for earning profit. Any industry. Because if they don't earn profit, how will they function? How will they be able to provide salaries? And if they are not able to provide salaries, why will people work there? Industry will be shut down. So regardless of all the big things that people talk about, that this industry is for the welfare of humanity, etc., etc., all of them are basically for profit. And then the location of industries. When we talk about the location, there also you would come across many different interviews that, you know what, I have opened up this industry in this region because I like the culture, I like the people here. All of that is basically a lot of, or to the lack of better polite words, is something which is garbage. Location of an industry or where an industry is located is completely dependent upon where is it that it is very efficient and optimal to operate your industry. So that is a kind of a work and a study which has been carried out for centuries now, ever since the onset of industrial revolution, that where is it that the industry should be situated. And it was in the 1800s when Weber provided a theory of industrial location. Now, obviously, in general studies, Weber's theory is not relevant. So, Weber at that point of time said that, you know what, you have three important components based on which the industrial location is dependent on them. And which is those components? He said availability of raw materials, transportation cost of not only the raw materials but also the finished products, and finished products you have to carry to the market, right? Market means where there is demand, not a mall, wherever there is a demand. So he said that a kind of a perfect balance between the availability of raw materials, transportation cost should be minimum, and access to market should also be there. That is an ideal location for an industry. But this was a theory provided in the 1800s. The world has changed quite drastically since that point of time. So now you have various different factors available for, or various different factors which are dependent or responsible for the location of the industries. Now, based upon the availability of raw materials itself, you will have the presence of two types of industries, or a classification of industries based upon the type of raw materials that they end up handling. So, based on the availability of raw materials, you have the classification into Sangam Reddy. Is there any type of lithium mineral available in India? Yes. Lithium, that is why I told you current affairs. Lithium is available in, has been explored in the region of Mandya in Karnataka, first of all. And then the latest findings, they have indicated the presence of lithium in the Riyasi district of Jammu and Kashmir, where you have, Riyasi is that district where you also have the very famous Chenab rail bridge, which is being constructed. Okay. So here we have the classification as weight gaining industry, and weight losing industry. The name in itself tells you weight gaining means what? The final output is heavier than the raw materials. So in the production process, the final output becomes much heavier. So final output is heavier than the raw materials. Okay, so that is weight gaining. Example, think about it. Any example that you can think of? You have locomotives, shipbuilding, aircraft manufacturing, etc. Now, if I ask you a question that in these types of industries, transportation cost, if you have to save the transportation cost, ideally, where should the industry be situated? Closer to the source of raw material, or closer to where the market or the requirement of the material or the finished product is? Closer to the market or closer to the raw material? Very good. Closer to the market, because the finished product is going to be much heavier. So you cannot have a ship manufacturing, let's say in Allahabad, and then transport that ship. Allahabad still is on the banks of the river. So you cannot have, let's say, ship manufacturing in Bilaspur, Chhattisgarh, and then by road you transport that ship all the way to the nearby port. Right? It will be a very costly endeavor. So that is why industries are located closer to the market. Then after that, we have the weight losing industry. In this, the final output is lighter than raw materials. Example, you have sugar industry. Sugarcane is much heavier than the final sugar which is generated. Then iron ore, right? That is also a kind of a weight losing industry. Now, in this case, what do you think? Does it make sense for the industry to be located closer to the raw materials or closer to the market in order to save transportation cost? Where should the industry be situated? Closer to the raw materials? Very good. So here you have industries are located closer to the source of raw materials. Source of raw materials. Having said that, let me make one thing very clear, that in the modern day and age when the transportation is becoming very, very efficient, now it is no longer those days where in order to set up an iron and steel plant, if you take a look at the present day iron and steel plant and iron and steel industry, you will find that majority of the steel plants, they will be earlier ones, they are majorly situated around the region where you will find iron ore, where you will find coal, where you will find limestone, so that the raw materials can easily be brought into. But now the transportation has become so efficient that in one goods train, you can carry the entire raw materials required to an iron and steel industry, and it will be done overnight. So that is why nowadays, majority of the industries, regardless of weight gaining or weight losing, majority of the industries, they are now situated very close to the market centers. So that whenever there is a change in demand, there is a new demand which is made, the industries should have the capacity to cater to that demand. That is why nowadays almost all the industries you will find closer to the market itself. So Weber's theory in the present day scenario doesn't hold true. Okay. But all the Airbus and Boeing planes are manufactured in Europe and US and supplied all over the world. Yes. But see, wherever they are manufactured, the for example, Airbus is manufactured in Toulouse in France. Now there, how is it that the plane is supplied to the rest of the world? By flight, right? They fly over, right? So in the case of the airplane, they can easily fly over. Even in India, you have the manufacturing of planes, the defense fighter planes happening where? In Bangalore. But there they have the ability to fly. So that is why here you will generally find. Now, even in that case, I'll come to it. So think about it. Let's talk about the factors controlling industries, and then I'll take the case of these aircraft manufacturers. You'll get an idea about what do we mean by closer to the market. So these are the other factors which contribute the location of industries. Raw materials we have already seen. There should be a reliable availability of raw materials. reliable availability, and cheaper price. At a cheap price, it should be available. Fuel and power. So any industry will automatically be located in those areas where fuel and power supply that is resilient, that is reliable. For example, an industrialist, if that person is given a choice that you can open up an industry in a region which is economically backward and there we don't have a power supply for 24 hours, or you can open up an industry, let's say in Maharashtra or Gujarat or Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, where we'll ensure you 24-hour power supply. Obviously, the industrialist will choose the latter, because even if the industry is shut down, let's say for 1 hour or let's say for half a day, that can mean a loss in millions, because restarting the entire process will be a significantly costly process. Then, human resources, very important for the location of industries. Now, when we say human resources, here we have two types of human resources, both skilled and unskilled labor. Both of them are required. Unskilled in the general factory production process, right? Not large amount of skill, and skilled in many of the innovative sectors. Now think about it. Whenever you had any of these specialized industries for specialized production coming, let's say for a brief moment, Tesla was considering to opening up a plant in India, right? Now Tesla was choosing Karnataka, was close to choosing the region of Bangalore. Why do you think that was the condition? Did Tesla fall in love with the culture of Karnataka, the food of Karnataka, the famous ragi balls of Karnataka? No. Was it that the climate was so conducive enough that that Elon Musk was absolutely convinced that, you know what, Karnataka is the place to be in the world, and that is where I will open up my factory? No. That is because you had the availability of skilled manpower. In the region around Bangalore, you have a lot of people with technical proficiency who get generated and supplied to the workforce year after year. So that is why you have skilled manpower, right? Think about it. When a new software sector is being set up or a new software industry is being set up, why is it that they choose either Hyderabad or Bangalore? Is it so that, okay, either I will get a good Andhra biryani or I will get a good the Karnataka biryani brands that you have? Is it because of that? No. Is it because that, okay, the politics in this region is so very nice, I don't like the political setup in the northern part of the country? Is it because of that? No. Purely driven by the skilled manpower. Wherever you will have skilled manpower, availability of industry will be there. And unskilled manpower is also relevant for the growth of large industrial setups, large industrial zones. For example, you have the Haldia industrial zone in West Bengal. You have the Chota Nagpur industrial zone. You have the Mumbai Pune industrial zone. All of these have risen up on the basis of these manpower, right? They would provide employment in large numbers. Having said that, now this role of unskilled manpower is at risk. It is being consumed by AI. It is being consumed by the robotics, automation. So that is why skilled manpower is still very high in demand. That is why, even if you take a look at the trends of job creation in India, many people have a grievance that, the rate of job creation which was present in the 60s and the early 70s was there, that suddenly you would come across a newspaper advertisement that Tata Steel is opening up another plant. So anybody who has passed class 10th is free to apply, and then you are a worker of Tata Steel. So 4,000, 10,000 people would get absorbed. Now you don't have that scenario anymore. And that is not present anywhere in the world. Why is that? because now the industries are striving towards efficiency. They are striving towards saving money, and they require skilled manpower. So even today, Tata Steel would go to almost major the good colleges across the country, and they would hire people at very good packages. So the demand for skilled manpower is still there. It is the unskilled or the medium skilled demand which has reduced and which is going to reduce furthermore in the coming years. Okay. Then you have transportation. Now, transportation should be affordable, efficient, and quick, so that a power plant which is set up in, let's say, Tarantaran district of Punjab, right, near, let's say, Jalandhar. Now, that power plant, if it wants to operate on the coal to be found in Odisha, that coal would be able to reach there at a very cheap price, maybe within one day. So then that industry will prosper. So wherever you have an industry, which is, or wherever a region is present, which is well connected by infrastructure of transport, industries will naturally prefer to get situated in that region. The National Capital Region of Delhi is an industrial zone. You'll find many industries around the National Capital Region of Delhi, including the very well famed, initially you had on the outskirts of Gurgaon, in the region of Manesar, you had Maruti Udyog, which set up its manufacturing plant. Now, why did Maruti set up its manufacturing plant there? And after Maruti, the entire ecosystem came up, and you had a lot of these industries functioning there. So in Delhi NCR, you have that unique availability of all types of transportation infrastructure, be it highways, connectivity to almost all parts of the country, be it railways, be it airways. There is significant amount of connectivity. So that overall reduces the cost. Cost of operation is reduced, means profit is generated. Then you have market. Market here refers to availability of demand. Availability of demand. Wherever there is demand, industries will come to that region only. Wherever there is a demand, industries will come to that area, will come to that region. So basically, for example, again, let's take the example of Tesla, or let's take the case of Apple. Now, Apple, when it wanted to shift its production base outside of United States, where did it go to? It went to China. China had very great demand, right? When Tesla wanted to open up another factory of production in terms of where it would produce the electric cars, it chose the market of China. Why didn't it choose India? Because India still doesn't have that market to buy the electric vehicles at that price range, 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs. We don't have that market. Now take another example. For example, you have the manufacturing of fighter jets. Fighter jets are niche areas manufactured by only certain parts or certain companies in the world. You have Northrop Grumman, you have Boeing, Airbus, Saab, then you have the Dassault in France, Mikoyan Gurevich in the region of Russia, Sukhoi. Now, around 30 years back, when India, before this, India was trying to buy the fighter jets, no one was ready to supply at a competitive price, let alone opening up a factory of production in India. Now, India is very close to placing an order for around $20 billion, $10 to $20 billion worth of order for the fighter jets, the medium combat aircraft. Now, take a look at all these industries, be it Lockheed Martin, which manufactures the F-16s. Now, they are interested not only in opening up a factory in India, they are also saying that we'll come up with a new model of aircraft for you. Why? Is it because that now they like the people of India much better? No, that is because now India is a market. Majority of the, when we talk about aircraft manufacturing, think about it. Boeing, Airbus. Now, Air India has placed a very large order of for Boeing as well as Airbus. Now, there, if you have that large market, you will also have the determining say that some amount of that will be produced in India only, and the others will have to agree to it. So that is where, wherever there is demand, there will be the industrial location will be based on that demand. Okay. Then you have capital. Rafale. Vivek, Rafale is manufactured. What is the parent company? Rafale is a fighter jet. It is the name of the fighter jet. What is the parent company of Rafale? It is Dassault, right? Dassault Aviation, which is present in France. Rafale is not a name of a company. Rafale is a name. So it is like F-16. F-16 is not a name of a company. F-16 is basically a model which is generated by Lockheed Martin. Okay. Then we have capital. That means availability of working capital. So when you want to run an industry, regardless of what is shown in the movies, that you open up your safe or a locker and you bring out wads of money and then you distribute it to the labor so that the industry will function. That is not how the industry functions. An industrialist, when he opens up an industry, do you think they will start taking money out of their own bank account to pay the salaries? Never. They are reliant on the working capital, the loan, right? If it is given on easy rates, if it is given on very simple terms. So wherever the financing is easy, attainable, achievable, there you will find the industries to be situated. That is why many of the industries, they start setting up their bases around the regions where banking facilities are very easy. For example, take a case of Singapore. Singapore is turning out to be a financial hub. Many of the industries want to set up, the software sector industries, they want to set up their base there, right? Finance sector industries, they want to set up their base there. That is why in Gujarat, you have the establishment of the gift city in order to attract that kind of industrial force here also. Then you have government policy. Government policy is wide ranging. Infrastructure, clearances, law and order, taxation regime, and overall ease of doing business. How easy it is to carry out business in a particular region. Now, this is very, very important in order to determine the location of the industries. For example, in a region where infrastructure is good, take the case of the states like Bihar and compare it with, let's say, Maharashtra. Now, wherever the infrastructure is good, automatically industries will get there, right? Take the case of the time taken for clearances. Now, India is notoriously known for taking a long period of time to provide a clearance. It will take you many months and many trips around the ministry, significant amount of money to be given in the hands of the various officials to get a particular clearance. So, as I have already told you, that, for example, you had the chairman of Marriott Group of Hotels. He had given a very good example a decade back when he was asked a question that, why are you not expanding the business in India? He had a very simple answer that, look, by the time that I will apply for the clearance process in itself is so complicated. By the time that I will apply for your clearance, and by the time that I get that clearance, in that time period, I will be able to not only establish a hotel, construct a hotel, the entire building, and start functioning it in Vietnam. So I will open up more hotels in Vietnam, maybe. So that is where many of the economies, they have managed to attract the industries. For example, after COVID pandemic, when many of the industries wanted to shift their bases out of China, few of them they chose India, but many of them chose Vietnam because the clearance and the taxation regime was very, very friendly. Then law and order, a major issue. Take the case of Tata Motors. Tata Motors wanted to establish the nano plant, the plant for the manufacturing of its flagship car, that is Nano. It wanted to establish it in Singur in West Bengal, right? Land acquisition had been done, construction had been initiated, production process was to commence. But then there was an issue of agitation, law and order. And Tata Motors overnight shifted the entire production process where? In Gujarat. Now, there's a very nice research article and a kind of an economic research article, and I hope no disrespect meant. I don't mean to offend anyone here, but when you are preparing for the exam, you need to be able to look objectively at each of the regions, right? Each of the state, even if your own state. So before talking about it, let me tell you, all the states are the best. They are the best states out there in the world. All the cities are the best in the world, in the country. So if you are belonging from that state or that city, I sincerely hope that you don't get offended. But there's a very nice article and a research paper on the deindustrialization of West Bengal. That West Bengal, which at one point of time was the industrial hub, right? In the post independent India, if you take a look at all the major industries, they had their headquarters in West Bengal around Kolkata. Now, take a look at it around 50 years later. All of them have shifted to Mumbai. What do you think would be the reason? Now, at that point of time, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, continuing up till 2000s, you had an issue of frequent strikes and bunds, which would be called. And that is where the industries would be uncomfortable. The industries, they function in order to generate revenue. If you are closed or shut down for 20 days in a month, how can you operate profitably? Now, Freescale, earlier one of the biggest manufacturers of semiconductor in India, or in the world rather. Freescale did not have its presence in India. Now, Freescale, right now, if you observe across the country, be it the minister, be it the administrators, everyone, they will talk about how we will increase the semiconductor production in India. Freescale came to India around 2006 and 2007 and wanted to establish world's largest semiconductor manufacturing plant in Kerala. It had only two kind of clauses that it wanted to get fulfilled. It would have provided employment to many people. But Freescale had two conditions it laid out before the Kerala government. First, ensure that after I have acquired the land, there is no dispute over that. I don't want to shift my production base immediately after acquiring the land. And second, just ensure that for 1 year since the commencement of production, there is no band or strike call initiated by the workers, because that will put the production in disarray. The government could not agree to these two conditions. They thought that Freescale will budge, will bend before them. What happened? Freescale took the entire setup, which it was to be set up in Kerala. It went to China, opened up the world's largest semiconductor manufacturing plant. And look where China is today in terms of semiconductor manufacturing. You have the entire ecosystem, many different industries which have come up. So oftentimes the government policies, they are a determining factor. Then taxation regime. Have you ever observed that if you go to, let's say, Himachal Pradesh, if you go to Uttarakhand, if you go to Goa, you will have a lot of pharmaceutical industries which are set up. Why do you think that is the reason? That is because the taxation regime has been made much more friendly for them. That is where they set up their base. So the government policies, they are nowadays one of the determining factors for the industrialization or deindustrialization of a place. If the government, wherever, anywhere, let's say, if the government suddenly will start hounding the industries for some matter or the other, in the flight of capital takes place. Flight of capital means they will set up their base somewhere else. And there people will find employment, their prosperity will happen. Once prosperity happens, more industries will come up, more prosperity will happen, more demand, further complicated level of technological industries will also come up in that region. So one region keeps on getting industrialized, the other region where the industries have moved out from, they will have a further flight of capital. So regional, national, international disparity oftentimes arises because of this. Okay, so these are the various factors leading to the location of industries. Now we take a break, and after break, when we come back, we'll talk about few of the industrial regions, industrial corridors, before moving into human geography. So we take a break, and we will be back at around 2:10 p.m. Okay, and then we will continue.